If you were in charge right now, would we have any COVID controls? Would there be a traffic light system, and would there be external border controls or internal border controls?
Yeah, look, I mean, our argument has been, we're getting to a place where we're a highly vaxxed country. We've got over 90%, 9 in 10 Kiwis now double vaxxed. And what we're arguing is, look, there's a need for us to be in a risk place. We need to manage risk incredibly well, and we need to have some restrictions. But ultimately, as we get increasingly vaccinated, we should be also be able to step away and create more freedom for people too. And I think the government stepped in as rightly as they should have. I have to say to you, I think it's got horribly confusing. We've gone from alert levels to steps to traffic light systems. And to be honest, I think in the last few months it's completely felt like it's been made up on the fly. And it's always Johnny come lately and things not being executed very well. But our view has been, as you saw with the opening up plan that Chris Bishop put together a month or so ago, once we get above 85% levels of vaccination, we should be able to start opening up safely and not being reckless about it and constantly monitoring and doing all those good things. But actually, when we've got Auckland now, 9.5 out of 10, Auckland is almost double vaccinated, we're as safe as we can be.
What do those restrictions look like? There's still some restrictions.
Well, I think we've laid it out. If you think about border, people coming in and out of low, medium, high risk countries. When you think about actually other restrictions we would have to have around masking and those sorts of things, we need to make sure they're appropriate and fit for purpose.
Would you still see a place for vaccine passes?
Might well be, yes. There would be definitely a need for vaccine passes, I think. But ultimately, we'll have to get to a point where we'll need to, as we put those in, we ultimately have to step away and pull them out.
So when you say you want a traffic light system at all, you're sounding like you still want quite a few bits of it. You want vaccine passes, you want masks, you still want some...
No, but I mean, the way, we believe that, as we said, if you got above 85% double vax, the country is in incredibly good shape at that point in time. What we're seeing in Europe is we're seeing countries like Germany and Austria that are still in the mid to late 60s in terms of double vaccination. And so that's quite a different place when you'll be able to get almost, in this case, we're already 9 out of 10 of us are double vaccinated across the country. And you start to have to say, how do people get on with their livelihoods? And it's not to be reckless, and we need to manage it very safely. But I think at the moment, a good example for me, MIQ. We've not had a single person with COVID coming from Australia for the last 4 months, was what Chris Hipkins said yesterday. And yet we've now got very few people with COVID in 4,000 rooms, and we're not able to bring in our skilled workers. We're not able to bring in returning Kiwis that want to come home for Christmas. And I think that's just being pragmatic and smart. I can tell you when I ran an airline, it was all about risk management, right? You manage risk, and that's exactly what we need to do here. But I think some of these settings have been not right.
Internally, you were saying when you were the Auckland hospitality owners that they were ready to be in green. You said you want to get rid of a traffic light system. Green would mean vaccinated past people mixing about people who might not be vaccinated. You're saying that's fine now yet?
I said they wanted to go to green. What I said to you, is that Auckland should. I can't see a justification for Auckland to be in red today.
Regulation, right? But it doesn't mean that you necessarily give them.
No, but I can tell you those businesses are doing everything. They're following all the protocols. They're trying to keep up to speed. Go out and actually meet with them. Go talk to them. Go see them. The Prime Minister hasn't done that, and I would encourage you to go do that, because these are good people doing the right things by their people, wanting to keep their customers safe, keep their employees safe. They've put protocols in place. They've adapted to everything. But at the moment, if you're in Auckland, a lot of those businesses have got 40% of their revenues, and I can tell you now, Auckland will empty out on New Year's Eve, and they're going to be doing it really tough in January, February. So I'm not saying it's about being reckless. You've got to balance these things, but you actually have to balance livelihoods as well.
So does orange make sense for you for those businesses, or does it need to be green? Because orange would let them fill up as much as they want.
So what I was saying to the Prime Minister yesterday was, why can't Auckland be in orange now? Because actually the healthcare system isn't overwhelmed. We've got high levels of vaccination rates. If you look at the traffic light system, that was the criteria that she said triggered red. That is not the case. By her own admission, the hospital system is doing fine. We have 3 or 4 people in ICU. We've got most of New Zealand double vaccinated. We've got an R score below 1. We've got cases declining. When you just look at the fact base, the question is, well, why is Auckland still stuck in orange? And it doesn't. And honestly, those 2 weeks make a difference. The last 2 weeks made a difference. These people are going through thousands of dollars each and every week. Huge stress and anxiety.
Does loosening restrictions, especially on the border, make sense now when you look at what's going on overseas? The UK, pretty similar vaccine levels to us. They're reimposing vaccine pass requirements. They're encouraging workers to stay at home. Norway, not that far, pretty similar to us vaccine-wise. They're kind of in a halfway lockdown now. They've there's stopped venues selling alcohol. That would be worse than red for hospitality, I'm sure. Should we be stripping it away only to maybe have to go back?
Well, the point is that you should be able to go up and down a system based off the risk that you see, right? And that's the point, is why lock in on if the risk is lower, which I would put to you in New Zealand in the last few months it has been, why don't we lessen restrictions? When the risk goes up, we tighten restrictions. It's pretty pragmatic about it. Right. Our view on the border has been pretty simple, which is that there are low, medium and high risk countries where you'd actually differentiate and treat them very differently. Not one size fits all, not an MIQ lottery system causing anxiety, stress, and I think is incredibly cruel. At the end of the day, at one point in this last month, we had 35 people with COVID in 4,000 hotel rooms, out of 4,000 hotel rooms. Most people were double vaccinated, negative tested, are sitting there for 14 days is what's been happening.
Do we need to end not just MIQ but self-isolation within the first half of next year?
Well, no, I think there might be a case, we need self-isolation, but again, technology, none of these tools have been applied. And my frustration is, look, the government did a good job in 2020, New Zealand did a good job, but 2021 has been a year where actually we've wasted opportunities, we haven't been prepared, we're not de-risking it because we're actually not executing things very well. Everything's on the fly, everything's been made up as we go.
Did you just say that we have, R rate below zero, vaccine rates that are higher than the rest of the world? Does that really point to an execution gone off? Or does it point to a few things on the side?
Well, look, vaccine passes, right? We've got New Zealanders that may have got one or two of their vaccines overseas that are back in the country and they can't participate in cafes or dining. So that's been going on for a long time. Getting an app developed when there's several good ones in other countries around the world, we've come up with something and it's all a bit too clunky and a bit too hard. We talked about antigen testing. We've talked about that since August last year. And the bottom line is it's just been made available to pharmacists today and they're already running out of stocks. So the question is, they're all good initiatives. You can talk about them, but actually doing them and making sure it's well executed, like we see in other places, is important.
On the roadblocks, or the road testing out of Auckland, there's pretty consistently traffic jams out of Auckland on Christmas, Boxing Day. I'm sure you've experienced them yourself. When does it become a default of the government, and when is it just a traffic jam because more people are using the system than the system's designed for? Well,
look, our issue is just the confusion with the system again, right? Yesterday you had the Prime Minister saying, look, it's just like spot checks and it's just going to be like a drink driving booze bus. On the other hand, you've had the police saying, no, they have an intention to try and stop each and every car. It just needs to be set as to what the expectation and actually what is happening. The issue is the maths. The maths are that every day there's about 10,000 people that go through that checkpoint north, even on a normal day. If you're going to take 2 minutes to check every car, you're at 300 hours. If you're going to check it 1 in every 10, you're at 30 hours. If you're doing less than 1 in 10, you've sort of got to ask the question, what's the point? When almost mid-90% of Aucklanders are actually fully vaccinated. So our issue is, again, it's all just been made up on the fly and it's not joined up and it's not synced up. And I think when Aucklanders thought they were going into a short, sharp lockdown, which they had to do because fundamentally we had a slow and abysmally poor vaccine rollout. Prime Minister in March is saying, oh, it's okay, other countries deserve it more so than us. That execution was very poor and that led to our Auckland being in lockdown, if we're really honest with ourselves about that. So, 15 weeks in lockdown, still restrictions going on for another 3 or 4 weeks, and now, you're sitting in the car with the kids trying to get to the beach and unsure as to what to expect.
There was a poll out yesterday that showed National quite a bit up, but you're eating into ACT, not Labour voters at this point. When do you think you'll start taking votes from across the boundary, from Labour, from the Greens?
Yeah, well, look, 14 days into it, it's a positive and encouraging sort of start, from a poll point of view. But to be honest with you, we've got so much work to do ahead of us with the National Party to make sure it really is connecting to, New Zealanders. I want it to be a mainstream party. That means we need to be able to get close to 1 out of every 2 voters thinking that we are a great alternative and we are the right choice for them. And so that's the job over the next 2 years, is to make sure that we've got policies and plans that are focused on the problems and solutions, and delivering real solutions for New Zealanders. So, to be honest, I'm not reading too much into all of that. I'm just focused on making sure the National Party does what it's supposed to do, which is focus on New Zealand people.
Have you set a target? That's the kind of thing a CE might do. Say, look, end of a year, next year, 2022, we're going to get to this. No,
that's not the way I kind of roll. To me, it's just I've got 7 quarters to the next election. There's some big things that we've got to get done each quarter, and it's making sure that the team stays really focused. Opposing the government, but I actually want to make sure in opposition it's 50-50, oppose and propose. And so, I want to see ideas and practical, pragmatic sort of solutions for these challenges that we've got.
Have you had a phone call or a meeting with David Seymour since becoming leader?
I had a phone call with David, but I spoke to all political party leaders as soon as I was selected.
Right, and on that phone call, did you discuss kind of how the coalition might work?
No. Look, David's someone I've known for a long time. He was my neighbour for many years, and so we get on well. But no, I was just doing a courtesy call to all the leaders, actually, and I want to have positive relationships with everybody.
Most people who become party leaders have had many of the positions kind of known for years. You've got here, I think, probably the quickest any major party leader has. So you've still got some relative unknowns on some things. Don't worry, I'm not getting into religion or anything. So I've just got a few questions on your views. A few leaders back national were committed to slowly raising the age of superannuation from 65 to 67 in 2038. Long way away. If you're getting super now, nothing changes, but eventually. Is that your policy?
Look, I'm really comfortable and consistent with that policy as it stands today. But as I said to you, over it's 14 days in. You've got to understand over summer we're going to be working pretty hard to get ourselves organised, and we've got a very good set of policy platforms and some good work that's been going on. But obviously we want to go through and see how we can sharpen that up, build on that, and work our way through that next year. But at the moment, I'm very comfortable with that.
Right, and the argument's basically just that it is eventually unaffordable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the arguments that Bill English laid out very clearly, when we implemented that.
You have a lot of experience of Air New Zealand, obviously. Does the Crown owning 51% of it, or close to 51%, still make sense?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Air New Zealand. In fairness to Air New Zealand, they've got a great CEO and they've got a management team there. That's a question you need to ask them.
It's also a question for the government. The government decide the size of the state. You're looking to lead the government.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think the model has worked, of the mixed ownership model has actually worked quite well in New Zealand. What I'd want to make sure is that the independence of those companies is maintained, because it's very easy without understanding the frame that they actually get to run independently without political interference.
And sorry, just quickly back to COVID before we go. You're talking about opposing and proposing with half and half. You oppose the traffic light system. You oppose Auckland being in red. It sounds like you're kind of okay with Auckland being in orange, not green now. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
as I said yesterday in the House, I'm asking the Prime Minister, why can't Auckland be in orange today?
But you also want to get rid of a traffic light system fundamentally.
Well, just
so
don't.
What's the new?
Our proposal has been very simple. At 85% and above, we feel very comfortable in a very measured way of opening up New Zealand and being able to put people into more freedoms. And so that's exactly what we've talked about before. Chris Bishop's talked about that.
We're not at 85% of every DHB though. And
Sorry,
we're not at 85% of every DHB.
No, but our view was that 85% as a national target. That was a place when we could actually start to feel that we could start to lessen restrictions for people.
What would you say to someone who has been double vaccinated, done all the right things, but lives in one of these areas where there's a lot of people who aren't vaccinated, and who has a kid under 12, and says, I don't want my kid to get COVID, and they can't get vaccinated yet. I can't do the right thing for them. But if more people come in who might have COVID, they can get it. What's the, is this?
Well, look, I mean, the rationale is very simple. We need to, move on. I mean, the plan is to look into that in the new year, as the government's been suggesting, once they get clearance from MedSafe. We want to be able to make the case for people and families to have a choice about, vaccination. But importantly, we've got to make the case very strongly as to why vaccination is the right thing, and continue the education campaign and get them into a good place around that. Are you a bit worried about this protest tomorrow? Last one from this group got a bit rowdy. No national MPs without it. Is that the same policy now? No national MPs should go out and address the Freedom and Rights Coalition protest? Yeah, look, I mean, I've been a bit frustrated, to be honest, with some of the protests I've seen in Auckland at times. I think they start to impinge on the freedoms of the 9 out of 10 New Zealanders that have done the right thing and gone and got double vaccinated. So I'll be really honest with you, probably not a lot of patience there. Christopher Luxon, Merry Christmas. Thank you for your time. Awesome.